All right. Good afternoon, good evening to everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're in different time zones here, so I say afternoon and evening because depending on where you're at. But my name is Veronica, and I'm going to be moderating today. Sister Annie is on as well, and she's going to be co-moderating. And we are just super excited about going into this next chapter of My People Are Rising by Erin Dixon. And we've had what's this, about 3 studies now
Oh, yes.
with this book. With this book, we started off with Comrade Kwame's book, My Search for Truth and Meaning, and then we went into Comrade Elder Hyde Thurman's book, Revolutionary Hillbilly. That was really good as well. And so now we're on to our third book, and this is the book that was decided on. So again, it's My People Are Rising, a memoir of a Black Panther party captain by Erin Dixon. And again, my name is Veronica Garcia. I am going to be moderating, but I'm also manning the technology. So y'all bear with me here. I just want to make sure that we don't have people trying to get in and I keep them waiting in the in the waiting room too long. Um, for those of you who do not know me, again, my name is Veronica. I am a mother of 4, grandmother to 2 little ones, and I'd like to say that I'm a nurturer of many more. By trade, I'm in the mental health field, and so I like to say that I work with people's inner child. I work with adults, but I work with their inner child. Um, and of course, as conditions get so hard out here, every day it's trying to meet basic needs for the people, and the resources just, seem to be dwindling down as the needs get higher, and so everybody's feeling it. Um, but so yeah, that's what I do by trade. I am also the Texas State Chair for El Partido de la Raza Unida, uh, or otherwise known as LRUP. Um, I am also a newer member of NASO, which is under the leadership of our comrade Elder Hyde Thurman, and a proud supporter of the Brown Berets as well. So, Sister Annie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, no problem, sister. And thank you for this opportunity and being the primary moderator for our book. My name is Sister Anna. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia. I am with the Guardian Rebellion as well as with the Second Rainbow Coalition Book Club. And also, I see that health is a very essential being, as what our sister Veronica had mentioned, where I'm a strong advocate regarding our health because, number one, we are the most marginalized, targeted people in which our voices are not heard, our pain is underrated, and we are, at a high risk for preventative illnesses, and that should never be the case, but it is a reality. And it has gotten so severe where, African American women are, you know, dying at a faster rate than anybody in our country. And we are dying at I would say, every 11 minutes behind hypertension, diabetes, obesity, mental illness. So it's so important to know about our situation and take our health back. And I am so happy to be part of a coalition of comrades and supporters who's doing that by forming together and sharing information and sharing important tips bring that in the forefront, from CPR to first aid and survival skills as well. So I thank you for being part of this important mission, and just continue the blueprint that our founding fathers and founding mothers of the Panthers have done. So I'm very appreciative in Black Power.
All power, sister. Thank you. And I love them pearls, by the way. Okay, so we have Tony and we have Che with us today. Would you guys like to, there's a small group, we'll hopefully have more people jumping in at some point, but would you like to introduce yourselves?
Well, my name is Che Nieves. I'm an Attica brother. I did 15 years in prison. I went to prison when I was 14. It was a gang fight and someone got hurt or killed, and I wound up going to prison for that. And while in prison, I became political, and in the process, I joined the Black Panther Party, and they're the ones who politicized me and gave me life. They gave me a lot of life. And as a result of that, you know, I was transferred from that prison, Auburn, to Attica. And when I went to Attica with some Panthers that went with me, they helped me form the first Young Law Party in Attica prison, you know, and I started organizing, formulating, and doing a lot of talk, and in the process of 30 days, we had quite a lot of people in a group. And as a result of that, I was transferred out because the administration always, when they see somebody doing something that is positive and it becomes a threat to them, they scoop you up and put you somewhere else. And that's what they did. They sent me to Greenhaven prison. But wherever I went, I was going to be who I was going to be, regardless. And so I went to Greenhaven, and over there I met one of the Latino brothers who was a nationalist, but he also was a Panther. And we talked and discussed the possibility of forming the second chapter of the Young Law Party at Greenhaven Prison. And that's what we did. We formulated. And it got really big. In a matter of 30 days, it was like 60 people, man. And the administration didn't like that. So they picked me up and the brother up, and they transferred both of us back to Attica. So for me, it was a transfer back to Attica. And so I went back to Attica. And so I've been doing that all my life, man. You know, while I was in prison, I was organizing in the yard, and I became a militant according to the administration. I became a communist according to the administration. I became an enemy. But that was okay, because as long as I knew that I was their enemy, I was doing something good. And that's something that comes from Miles. Miles said, when you do something good and the enemy knows you're doing something good.
Oh yeah.
For them, you know, you're doing something good, and for them, they're bad is bad. For whatever is bad for them is good for you.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
If what you're doing is causing the bourgeois to get nervous, you know you're doing something right.
Exactly,
Oh, yeah.
exactly. You know, and then they got, after like almost 15 years, they got tired of me, and they said, let's take this guy, put him out, and they put me out. You know, but I came out here and I started doing the same thing. I started organizing with some people, and we formulated what is called the Midnight Special, which was a prison organization that we used to receive information from the prison, and we put it together into a newspaper and send it back into the prison. So it was wonderful, man. You know, and then I got caught. I got involved with some nationalists, with some Puerto Rican nationalists out here, And you heard the Statue of Liberty. Remember the flag down the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah,
I had nothing to
yeah.
do with that personally. Personally, I had nothing to do with it. I was there. I was there. So that's who I am in essence, man. I'm a good guy. I'm your friend, you know, and to the enemy, I'm
That's
the
right.
enemy.
That's right. It's an honor to have you, hermano. It's an honor to have you, really. And thank you for
You're
your service.
you're an awesome guy, Che.
Thank you, brother. So are you, man. So are all of us, man, you know?
Gabby, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Hey y'all. I'm Gabby. As I as the name implies, yeah. So this is my second time joining the Second Rainbow Coalition book club. I already talked about it with Veronica, but yeah, I'm just really excited to be here with you guys, and I just hope that I'm able to be able to, to provide for this book club, and to learn from every one of you guys.
Gabby, would you like to give us kind of a recap of what we covered during the last chapter, the last two chapters that we did? What kind of stood out for you the most?
Well, I wasn't here for the
Fridays.
chapter before the last one.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
okay.
I was only here for chapter 5, I believe.
Okay.
We're on chapter 6 now, right?
Yes, we are starting
Yeah.
chapter 6.
Yeah, so I was only
So,
there. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say, because I just remembered that you had pointed that out to me earlier today, was that basically up to where we've gotten now has been childhood memories, and basically leading up to, I think the last chapter that we looked at is Aaron Dixon getting into high school, 9th, 10th years. So yeah, but we're going into a new section today, which starts the tide of the movement. But before we actually dive into the material, we're going to start out with our statement of unity. And let me see here. Does anyone else who's on here have it? Let me see here. I am also manning the technology,
Sister,
y'all,
I'll
so
help you.
bear with me. You have it, sis? Do you want to go
Yeah,
ahead
I
and
was
start us with it?
sure. I'm trying to send you the PDF copy.
Okay.
Okay. Hey,
While you're reading, sis, I'll try to grab it.
I haven't sent it
I
yet.
might be limited in what it is that I can do because I don't want to. Okay. I thought I saw it come through on Signal, but I can't get on it because I'm on the cell, so
Right.
it'll kick
I was
me out.
gonna send it another way.
If you could just copy, you could put it right into the chat.
Okay.
Copy and paste.
Definitely, I will.
Okay,
Okay.
I can, if you want to do that, sis, so that way everybody has access to the material, I could go ahead and get it started with the preface.
Okay, you want to just go ahead and do the preface, and I'll just go ahead and copy and paste it, or you want me to
Yeah.
start it?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you could just copy and paste it, because I can't actually get into it from here.
Okay.
And then after the
All right.
preface, we'll check in and see where you're at. Okay, so we'll start off with the preface for the Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to reservations or concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As Huey P. Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary, racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is destroying life on earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life. Food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. And that is the preface for the Statement of Unity. Sister Annie, I think I just saw come through, you were able to copy and paste the actual
Yeah,
PDF?
I went ahead and did that, but I don't know if everyone is able to upload it or,
Okay. Yeah, thank you for doing that, sister. So it's in the chat. So if you can access it through there, and open
if
that
you
up
just
and
let
kind
me
of
know.
follow.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
you
if you're not able to, we could do the email, right, sis? And then we could just send it from there. So, sister, do you want to go ahead and read the Statement of Unity? For those of you who are asking, we are going to be starting on page 49. If you want to start looking for that, if you're, downloading the PDF. But okay, yes, sister, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, while everybody look for the page, I'm going to start reading the second half of the Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition, and here how it goes. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its foundings on April the 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords and Young Patriot Organization. A number of other organizations joined the coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Raising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against the capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. The historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle. He said that it was a class struggle, God damn it. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used their entire repressive forces of the state, such as the police, courts, jail, prisons, and intelligence agency, etc., in order to crush this emergent revolutionary socialist movement. We founded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that the historic example is the model of the united front that will best serve our class liberation by upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriarch organizations, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members. We establish our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all of the organization in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities, and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structure, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Hashtag all power to the people. Hashtag boots on the ground. All members of the coalition include the New African Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, I believe that's the whole East Coast, the White Panther Party, the Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, Fairies, Feminist Uprising to Resist Inequality and Exploitation, the Guardian Rebellion. And is there another group that I need to include, sister?
I think after Fury was Nassau. Did you mention that one?
Okay. Yes, I did.
Okay, and then the new era Young Lords Guardian Rebellion. I think the only new one was the one you mentioned, was the American Indian Movement Northeast Woodland chapter.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and that was dated August 21st, 2021. And the 6 disciplinary rules are: number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Second, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activities with a member. 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so.
All right. Thank you for that, sister.
You're
So with
welcome.
that, we will go ahead and we will get started. We got some more people that have joined. Does anybody want to introduce themselves before we get started? I won't put anybody on the spot, but if you would like to do so, we would love to hear from you.
I'll introduce myself. If
Okay.
I'm Tony Rodriguez. I'm a unit commander here for the Brown Berets in Dallas. I'm also a voting member for La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, and I sit on the Tejas table, which is a coalition of Brown Berets here in Texas. And so I'm glad to be here.
Thank you,
Welcome.
hermano, for joining us. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's my honor.
All right, going once, going twice. Anybody else? Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So we may, sister, need to paste that again, just because I think as people are coming in, I don't think that the comments prior to them coming in will show up. So
Yes,
if
ma'am.
anybody, yeah, so if anybody's needing it, we might need to just copy and paste again. But we'll go ahead and get started. So again, we are reading from My People Are Rising. And the section that we're starting is called The Tide of the Movement. And today we have one chapter that we're covering. Usually we do 2, but for some reason we're doing 6. And that's not to say that there's not a lot to cover there, but we do want to be respectful of people's time, and try not to go too much past our time. Try to stick to about an hour and a half. Definitely never more than 2 hours. So we go all night, right, Brother Che, Annie?
Yeah.
we'll go all night. Somebody got to stop us.
I have a
But
question actually.
yes, of course.
So how long will this call be? Maybe you don't want me asking.
Well, we started here 36 minutes ago. We will try to wrap up in about an hour.
Gotcha.
Is that good for you, or do you have some other engagement?
Oh no, I'm good. I have time. I was just wondering. Also, what page are we on exactly?
We are on page 49.
49. Okay, let me go there.
Yeah.
49.
But yes, Gabby, so we're in different time zones, so we
Yep.
definitely try to stick to that. Do the hour and a half, and try to not go over the 2 hours. But of course, if at any given point somebody has to go, of course we understand. These are always recorded as well, and then we will share it. So if there's anything that you miss, you can always go back and check it out later.
Indeed.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Gabby.
I was gonna say that introduction about the U.S. being founded on imperialism, white supremacy, settler colonialism, and eugenics was a very strong introduction. I really liked it, and it's 100% true. The U.S. has always been a settler colonial country. It's a white concept. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yes. Okay, if y'all will excuse me for a minute, I have somebody knocking at my door. Sister Annie, do you want to start us off with the reading?
Okay, that'd be no problem. And thank you, Gabby, for including that as well. And I just want to say, as far as this chapter is concerned, is chapter 6, and we begin with a slow awakening. It's a brief chapter. And I welcome everyone who's able to get a copy of the PDF to come and join us and help us moderate. Okay, slow awakening. When you feel really low, yeah, there's a great truth you should know. When you're young, gifted, and Black, your soul intact. And this was written and sung by Nina Simone. And the title of this little poem or song is "To Be Young, Gifted, and Black," that's dated 1970. And there's a picture of Conrad next to the chapter. Okay, my sophomore year is a volunteer integrator was a disaster. Seeing my dream of being a havoc, raising linebacker extinguished was difficult enough, but running into the big brick wall of racism was a rude awakening. It had always been there, weaving in ways in and out of our family history. I first got a glimpse of this ugly monster in the late 1950s as a 7 or 8-year-old, mostly on Friday night after the Friday night fights on TV was over. And our fried fish dinner had long since been digested. I saw Mama and Papa's sad faces. They knew full well that their Black muscular fighter, Sugar Ray Robinson, Archie Moore, and countless others, despite the trashing they gave their white oppressor, had been robbed, cheated out of victory by bigotry referees and judges. They never said anything about it to us kids. They never demeaned the whites. They just continue working to provide us with a sense of freedom that they and their parents never had. Poppy would come home from work at Bowie filled with rage from dealing with some petty racism. One day, while he was driving home and stuck in traffic, someone drove by and shouted, I'm not going to say the word, the N word. Poppy lost his cool, got out of his car, grabbed rocks, sticks, anything he could throw, and propelled it all after the bastard who was long gone. Had he been able to get to the white man, Poppy would surely had hurt him, which is exactly why Poppy never owned a functioning gun and never wanted one around. I could understand why, when he came home, he reached for a highball. It helped to diffuse the anger, to hold at bay the deep rage and the memories of war. Mommy also had her share of stories of being told lies, such as, quote, no, we don't have any jobs open, end of quote. Despite a sign stating the contrary, and down from our house, there was the late Washington Realty office on the corner of 34th and Union, with the little skinny, pale, spectacled white lady behind the desk who let it be known that she did not do business with Blacks or Asians. As kids, we knew every other business's owner in I'm sorry, the lighting here is crazy. Vendrena on a first name basis, but we never venture inside the real estate office. For the most part, Seattle was different from a lot of places in the United States at the time. Racism was not out in the open, staring you in the face, thrusting you into frontations or forcing you to question your own integrity. Nevertheless, it was there, hidden mostly in a faraway neighborhood, in the souls and they hearts of misguided, miseducated, and misinformed white men and women. I remember listening to the older teenagers in the neighborhood as they shared their battle stories of venturing out of the central district, our safe haven, going to neighborhoods like Fairlard, Queen Anne, and Shorelines, and being attacked by bar waving the N word, yelling white boys, and how afterwards they would load up in their in 3 or 4 cars and drive back out to seek revenge. Always carry a bat with you, they said, and be ready to run. Then there was the unsettling story of the Black lady raped by a gang of white policemen with nothing ever said or done about it, which created a sense of helplessness in our young minds. At the end of one of our summer trip, we was driving back from Chicago. Poppy had driven the length of Montana, a grueling stretch. We reached Deer Lodge, a small cowboy town which Poppy spotted a motel with a vacancy sign, pulled into the lot and went in. He was dog tired and limping from a rupture Achilles tendons, which he had injured before the trip. When the man at the front desk told him he didn't have any rooms available, Poppy got that crazy look on his face. It was the kind of look that a man gets when he has had enough of talking and is prepared to take action, like I will tear you and this motel apart if I don't get a room. I'm not sure what Poppy said, but he put it into this Jack George cowboy in no uncertain terms that he was tired, his family was tired, and he better get a room or else. Later that night, as Poppy, Elmer, Michael, and I walked into a nearby store, the sheriff followed us around, peeping at us from behind corners as if we were going to blow up the town. Up on Madrona, we kids were largely insulted from the tentacles of racism. It was only when we ventured out that it reached us. Sometimes when we had softball games to a distant white working class neighborhood, things got intense. Sometimes the older kids get into a fight, or there were the questionable ball calls that always went against us. Over time, we seemingly became conditioned to such things. The biggest slap in the face came after our tennis team qualified for the Parks Department City Championship, which was held at the Seattle Tennis Club, a prestigious club on Lake Washington. Only a few years earlier, the same club had denied access to the greatest Mexican American tennis player of all time, Pancho Gonzalez. Everybody on our tennis team, were Black, with the exception of one Jewish boy, many who always wore a yarmulke. Everybody was sure where Marty went to school, and we didn't know the actual location of his house. We just knew he was a heck of an athlete, and we was always glad to see him up at the park. He was a phenomenal left-handed quarterback, a solid pitcher on a ball team and one of the best single tennis players in our age group up at Madrona. I don't think the Seattle Tennis Club was prepared to have a young or minority team competing on their clean, smooth, green courts, and they were even more surprised when we took first place, soundly defeating all comers. Besides receiving trophies, we were supposed to get lunch in the club dining area and a free swim in the Olympic side pool. To our astonishment, with the exception of Marty, they would not allow us in the restaurants or in the pool. Instead, they brought hot dog out to us and directed us down to the beach where we waited. Well, excuse me, while we watched the young kids we had defeated being led into the club dining area. In the moment, we were so excited about our victory, we didn't have time to think about what they were doing to us, but Emma and I could not forget. At Queen Anne, my 2.5 grade point average plummeted to a 1.5. My typing teacher flunked me because my wrist badly sprained from playing football made typing impossible. My math teacher, who never answered my question, gave me an E, the equivalent of an E or fail. Many of the kids I had known and played with at Denny Bland the year before were now distant and unfriendly. Somebody want to continue, or do you want me to go ahead?
Yes, sister, I just wanted to point out, I had taken into account that the PDF will have obviously a different page than if you're on the book.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
it does. That's why I posted that.
yes, thank you, sister. I was like, oh my goodness, it's like a 20-page difference. I didn't realize it would be that much, but yeah,
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is?
So
Wow.
yeah, it is.
Because
you
it's
said it's
only
page
Um,
73,
pages left.
right, sis?
Because
I
we're
don't
on
know.
page
I'm
73
sorry.
now. Yeah.
I don't know if
Okay.
it's. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Gaby, you
Gavin.
want to continue at a turning point?
So I actually was gonna say since it's the, but you guys were saying it since it seems to be different. I got lost.
Yeah, if you're
Okay.
reading through
Okay.
the
I
PDF,
was
we're on
gonna
page 73 in chapter 6.
I was gonna ask if it would be possible for one of you guys to like screen share the PDF. I think that would be a great way for so that way people don't get lost, in my opinion at
Okay.
least.
Can you share the files, sister?
I'm not sure how to share the file screen share.
So,
Okay.
so
If you have
if you,
mobile, it says share, like there's like a little
yeah,
option that says share.
All right. Do you want me to read down to, I guess, to the end of this page? I mean, I
yeah,
can
sis.
continue.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
I'm at
please.
a turning point came in late February of my sophomore year during the city high school basketball championship game held at Heck Edmondson Pavilion at the University of Washington. Garfield, predominantly Black school my neighborhood friend attended, was playing against Queen Anne, the all-white school where I was enrolled. The game seesaw back and forth, going down to the wire. I sat with my friends on the Garfield side, stomping out feet as we cheer our Black warriors to victory, holding our breath, our hearts in our throats, wondering if victories would be denied, as it so often was. When Black folks competed against whites in sports, it represented much more than a sporting event. It was a declaration of equality, a silenced demand that one's right to exist be recognized. With 5 seconds to go, Garfield had a 3-point lead and had the ball. We were all sitting there wondering what would go wrong. Garfield had been denied the city championship so many times in the past. Then, right before our eyes, it happened. A phantom foul was called on a Garfield player, giving the ball back to Queen Anne, and the referee even added another 5 seconds to the clock. Queen Anne ended up winning the game by 1 point. We were stunned, outraged at how blatantly victory had been stolen out of the hands of the Garfield players. I went home feeling very sick about the injustices of that game. When I went to school the next day, I noticed that a lot of students were absent. I also noticed that the white kids were looking at me strangely, staring at me like I had shit on my back. During the course of the day, I heard stories of how the white kids from Queen Anne were attacked and beaten after the game. Some dangled from the Montlake Bridge, others chased to unsuspected homes. The Black Garfield students had gone into a rampage declaring through their action that they would no longer tolerate blatant racism without them being some form of retribution. The remainder of my year at Queen Anne was very intense. The handful of Black students stayed closer to each other, everyone vowing not to return the following year. The rivalry between Garfield and Queen Anne had always been intense. After this incident, whenever we played on each other turf, violence broke out. Someone want to take in 1966, my junior year, on page 52 in the book?
I could do it. For the PDF, it's on page 74. In 1966, my junior year, I gave up on voluntary integration and came back to the community to attend Garfield, where Quincy Jones had honored his musical skills, where Jim Hendrix was enrolled before dropping out to embark on his quest to become the most famous guitarist in history, and where Bruce Lee had adopted as his own. Though not an alum, Lee had developed an attachment to Garfield with its wonderful mix of Black, Asian, and white students. He lived in Seattle for several years and often came by to greet some of his martial arts students or simply to hang out. Garfield's student body was mostly Black, and the rest mixed of Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, and whites. The staff was well blended with whites, Blacks, and a few Asians. In many ways, it was the ideal school for the 60s, a place where no matter your color or beliefs, you could feel free to express yourself. Here were the best musicians, the best athletes, some of the city's best teachers, the best example of racial harmony, and a rich tradition of openness. It was here at Garfield that my identity had an opportunity to grow and flourish. I could explore and search, discover who I was and why I was here on this earth. I found a new circle of friends, and over the next couple of years, we played sports together, got drunk together, and philosophized about our future and the world. At Garfield, there were old school teachers and new style hip teachers. The old school teachers, some of whom carried paddles, went around intimidating students. The new style was embodied by Mr. Peebles, the young white, sharply dressed math teacher and track coach who was better at teaching us about social development and dressing well than teaching math. He was very he was very well liked by the students and was able to set a good example for us young guys because he acted like one of us. On the other end of the spectrum was Miss Hurdley, a tall, light-skinned Black woman who never smiled. The word was out that she did not take any mess. There was no idle chatter or laughter in her class. She got the most out of you, whether you wanted to give it or not. A throwback to the old days when Black folk relied on their own initiative, understanding that hard work paid off. She was easily the best teacher I ever had. We read the classic we read the classics, and through her, I learned the love of literature. Miss Woodson, the tall, Black, rail thin student counselor, called me into her office one day during my senior year. I had been skipped a lot and getting into some trouble. For example, being kicked out of art class for starting a clay fight and being sent to study hall far too often. Miss Woodson had never said much to me, but when she said that day, but what she said that day angered me and woke me up. She said, Aaron, you're going to college. You were just not college material. Those were stuck in my mind like lead. Mommy and Poppy had always told us we were going to college. I guess I just assumed that I would go, but my GPA at that point was a pitiful 2.0, not high enough for me to be accepted into college. Not only was my GPA merely average, but I was also short on credits, meaning that if I failed or dropped even one class, I would not graduate. I knew that mommy and poppy would not be pleased with that, but it was the world of Miss Woodson that burned inside my head. I realized I had to buckle down, and the remainder of the year I did. I still worked at Swedish and had fun with my friends, but I made sure my students were taken care of. Even so, my studies were taken care of, even so. I still did not put in a lot of time on homework, doing most of it during school, so it would not interfere with those long hours up at the Madoran basketball and tennis courts. Besides hanging out with my friends, sports were the most important activities in my life. By now, football had taken a back seat to basketball and tennis. Every warm day during the school year, the ball players congregated up at Madorna Park. College players from Seattle, y'all, University, high school players for Garfield and Franklin, varsity rejects like me, and my buddies Mike, Dean, and Chester, and Michael Childs. We were all there waiting for an opportunity to get on the court and show our skills, waiting for winners, uh, sweating, pushing, shoving, jumping, scoring, rebounding, and sometimes fighting. I had become known for my rebounding, my fear, my fearlessness beneath the boards, and my connections, defense against older and bigger opponents. Sometimes we were out playing until sunset.
Anna. Huh?
Some of the guys even stayed out way past nightfall. I remember laying in bed, hearing the sound of the leather ball bouncing on the concrete and wondering who was still out on the court. Sports had become an increasingly important focus for me at that time. They gave me a sense of purpose. I could direct all my energy onto the basketball court and tennis court or the football field. I was fearless when playing sports. It was the one area where I had almost complete control, a healthy confidence in my abilities. But there were other more important things on the horizon for which many skills would prove to be best suited. Something was brewing in America, something that had begun hundreds of years earlier when Black slaves were brought to the shores of the New World. It was something unavoidable, something that could no longer be held down. The civil rights movements of the 50s had unearthed in the beginning of the end of segregation and outright racial discrimination. And it was my generation, not only young Blacks, but also young whites and other young people of color who sat at home watching the shanky Black and white television images studied by rabbit ear antennas of Southern
Yes,
Blacks,
yes.
integrating universities, schools, buses, restaurants, movie theaters, establishments, and institutions that had failed to recognize Blacks as equal human beings. These images penetrated our young minds, informing our visions of our future. The 60s had begun with one of the most unsettling events in US history, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in November 1963. Kennedy, the first Irish Catholic president, embodied possibility and hope, a break with the conservative 50s and President Eisenhower. Too many Black people, Kennedy represented an opening, a ray of light on a dark, ugly past. Many felt that at last there was someone in the White House who understood us, who cared about us, who spoke with his own words and not those of the power and money hungry Mongols that infested the political scene. We had been lied to for so long. Finally, we thought we would get the truth, but Camlet was short lived. On November 22nd, 1963, thousands of Americans gathered in starch dressed and pressed slacks and ties to watch their beloved president's car pass by in Dallas. Millions of other Americans were watching the parade on TV in their homes. Suddenly, Kennedy slumped over into his wife's lap with blood gushing from a bullet wound to his throat. Americans were in shock, stunned as they witnessed their president being shot in front of them out in the open in broad daylight. It was a heavy, terrible day. Like most of my peers, I was too young to comprehend the events that happened before our eyes. But our parents' sorrow and despair was transferred to us. It was the first and only time I saw Poppy cry, crying in anger, throwing chairs, books, barely able to hold himself up under the satin and sorrow, under the strain and sorrow, sorry. Little did we know that 1963 marked only the beginning of a very violent decade. Earlier that same year, Medgar Evers was assassinated. Evers was an important was as important to the civil rights movements as Martin Luther King Jr. had become familiar to every Black home in America. His leadership and tenacity would never be with us again. In 1966, the most feared Black man in America was assassinated. Malcolm X, tall, persuasive, sharp, strong, fearless, a brilliant man many of us had not even had the opportunity to know. It was only afterwards that we realized we had a genuine diamond in our midst, an authentic Black American hero who could have helped shape a positive future for this country. A year earlier in 1965, white policemen in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles stopped and arrested a Black motorist, Marquette Fry, on suspicion of driving under the influence and proceeded to beat him violently, as well as his mother, who lived nearby and tried to intervene. It was also rumored that in the preceding days, the Watts police had roughed up a pregnant Black woman. These events ignited the first of many violent riots to rock the nation. The Watts uprising woke up America. Blacks rioted for 5 days, burning down establishments that had exploited Black people far too long, snipping at racist cops, ramping through the streets, liberating TVs, clothes, food, and guns, throwing Molotov cocktails, leaving behind a wasteland. Thousands of miles away, young Americans were being sent to hostile hot jungles, armed with M14s, trained to kill Vietnamese men and women because they dared to fight for the unification of their country. Older boys I had grown up with were not absent from the neighborhood, no longer on the basketball court or the football field, but in the trenches, muddy, bloody, and slowly becoming bloodthirsty for an enemy they did not know. Many would never return. I managed to stay disconnected from all that chaos, yet it was slowly seeping into my subconscious. In other parts of the country, new Black organizers were sprouting up. Black nationalism, which rejected white culture and made its primary concern the improvement of the conditions of Black people, was just beginning to emerge. Its focus was on Black independence and self-determination. One day I was out on the tennis courts, perfecting my serve and my net game, aspiring to be next Arthur Ashe, the first Black male professional tennis player. Mommy called out from the porch as she usually did that dinner was ready. I remember walking by the TV at the 6 o'clock news was broadcasting, as the 6 o'clock news was broadcasting. Walter Cronkite was reporting that in Sacramento, some Black men with guns had invaded the California Capitol building. After dinner, as I walked back out to the tennis courts, I thought briefly about the image of the Black men with guns, feeling a tinge of pride and amazement. Then I forgot about it, yet the image stayed in the back of my mind. And chapter 7 is next. Did you guys want me to continue or?
No, sis. So we're only doing chapter 6 this time.
Okay.
Yes, but thank you so much for reading. That was a lot, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was real heavy, like the end of this. I mean, it starts off, mind you, chapter 6 starts off his sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just to think about that, like, you know, for all these things to be transpiring, everything from sports, the move from Chicago to Seattle, and how hard that was. And then we also talked about in the last chapter about integration, and what that, you know, how that seemed like a good idea at the time, was the words that he had said. And that was in 9th grade when he moved to transfer to the all white school, and thought it was just gonna be a good thing, right? I want to take us back to that specific page. Now, I'm not going to say that it's the same page on the PDF, because I'm not going to make that mistake again. But so in the book, page 35, I will read that small excerpt there. the integrationists were organizing and fighting for desegregation of the schools. Probably the biggest strategic blunder of the civil rights movement, in it that it forced Black kids to travel across town to hostile, racially charged environments, while white kids were able to stay comfortably in their own schools and their own communities. Black kids had to give up their secure surroundings and the dedicated attention and understanding of their Black or sometimes white teachers. But at the time, school integration sounded good, and it felt right for me personally to work towards Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. So that was when he made the transition to an all-white school. And in the last chapter, we talked about all the stuff that he endured there. It wasn't, and I like that it says at the time it sounded like a good idea, because it did. It sounded like progress. It sounded like we could all just come together. But, you know, with the issue of integration, it brings up other things that we hadn't maybe necessarily thought about, right? So here in the chapter that we just read, Slow Awakening, it starts us off in his sophomore year. He had already went back, let me not say went back, he actually transferred from the all-white school and then went to his neighborhood school. So this, just to kind of give us some context as to, you know, what had transpired before this chapter started. What are some thoughts that came up for you all as we were reading this chapter? I'll leave it very open.
Well, let me say this, man. The November, I think November 23rd of 1963, I think, I'm not sure. But I know I was almost 2 years in jail, man. I was getting ready to go upstate. And when I heard, you know, on the radio that John F. Kennedy was assassinated, a lot of people around me, then again, crying and stuff, man, you know, because, you know, John F. Kennedy, you know, was assassinated. And I mean, I didn't have, back then, like I was at the Brooklyn House of Detention, I was apolitical. I wasn't political at all, so I couldn't make any connection. But later on, you know, I made a connection where John F. Kennedy was responsible for the Bay of Pigs. And because of the fact the Bay of Pigs was a failure, you know, I think I personally feel that was one of the reasons why they set him up to kill, and they killed him, John F. Kennedy, because the CIA was behind it to kill Castro, you know, and take over Cuba, you know, and that was 1959. It was, everything was up, and, you know, Castro just came into power and all that stuff, and so, you know, the way I understand, the way it was told to me, John F. Kennedy had something to do with that, for the Bay of Pigs, you know. And the point of racism, man, you know, that the brother talked about in the book, remind me when I was a kid, and I was, you know, when I was a kid, in the streets of Brooklyn, you know, and I was hanging out, you know, and all of a sudden the police come out of nowhere, you know, and pick up a few of us kids, you know, and I'm talking about kid, I was like 8 years old, you know, and they'll round us up and take us to the precinct, you know, and some of us would get beat up. I know I used to get slapped, I used to get slapped around, and then thrown in, then taken to and where was it? in the Bronx, where to a detention center for kids. They call it Spofford, you know. And I noticed, man, that even in Spofford, how racism, they used to keep how they used to treat white kids, you know, as opposed to black kids and opposed and Latinos, you know, how they used to treat us, man, you know. So racism was definitely I was very early in age, man. I was exposed to racism, you know, and plus my mother taught me, you know, like I was telling you, man, before, you know, my mother being who she was Jamaican, you know, she taught me very good on racism, man, because she was raised, you know, when she came to this country, and I'm talking about New York in particular, you know, how she was confronted with racism, you know, very early in her age. And how my grandparents, who came from also from Jamaica, you know, how they were confronted with racism in Puerto Rico, you know. So, you know, I was exposed very early in life to what you know, what racism was all about, you know. And I personally had a lot of, because a lot of these people used to tell me, oh, how can you hang out with black people, man? I said, what you talking about? How can you hang out with people that didn't know who I was, man? You know, I said, what you talking about? Hanging out with black people. He said, well, you know, you white. I said, no, hold on, back up, man. You got it twisted. You got it twisted here. What appears to be white is not white. You know, and it's just like a lot of black women in the very early 30s, how being light skinned, they passed as white, and I can understand why. You know, there was many reasons for that. You know, but
Yep.
so anyway, that's all I got to say.
Being
All night, you know, I don't want to do that.
being white, I just want to say being white passing obviously doesn't erase, you know, you being a person of color. It doesn't erase your ethnicity, your culture, you know? It doesn't erase
Yeah.
any of that.
Right, right. Brother Tony?
We can't hear you.
You muted.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot to. Yeah, let me jump in before I lose my train of thought here. What you ended it with is very important, I think, especially still, you know, today. When you said that, you know, that, or what the book said, that the integration, you know, was a biggest failure, right? A lot of time, you know, if you say that right now, you know, to most people would have a negative reaction to that. Like, what do you mean, right?
Right.
And I think it's a very important lesson, especially for those of us in leadership positions, that we get sold these ideas and they get sold to us as progress. And we don't really see it all the way through, because at that moment, progress would have been for them to raise the standards in the already Black or Latino schools to the levels of the white schools. But what they did is they took what was meant to be, or maybe not meant to be a good idea. You know, it might not have been an accident, right? So they sell us these ideas as progress, and what they're doing is they're diluting us. You know, they're not building us up. Like he said, they put him in a situation where he was actually worse off, right? Now he couldn't study because he was being attacked. So he was feeling more racism towards him in you know, and you're in school, so you're a child, right? So it's a lot of trauma to you. So they were already facing lots of racism, and it only got worse because of that. And I think that's happening now. A lot of times they're selling us these ideas, you know, these politicians or whatever. Hey, this is progress. This is progress. But, you know, having these study groups, you know, we get to learn from the past. And I think that's very important to learn right now, is that we're getting sold these ideas that they consider in progress, but they're not, because they're not really helping our people. They're putting our people in worse positions. So I like that. I like how it ended. And the lesson I think that chapter is trying to convey to us, that for us to be careful, to analyze what's being done and the effects it's going to have, you know. So I like that. I like that lesson. You know, it's very important, I think, in this day right now too, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I like how you put that, because it's not to take away from the struggle at that time. You know, how you worded it was perfect, hermano, because we have to look at what was going on in that time frame. And so what in that time frame was progress or appeared to be okay. I mean, at some point, you know, most of us are not taught even uh, Dr. King's, uh, you know, when he started thinking a little bit differently, you know, the last 2 years when he was
Yes.
in turmoil and in dissonance with himself and feeling like, you know, the one quote that we should really know him by is the one where he says, I feel like I'm leading my people into a burning house or
Yes,
building.
exactly. And I mean, that's I think that's what's happening right now, to be honest. You know, it's like we push for something, right? We're out here, you know, a lot of us in leadership positions, you know, this Rainbow Coalition is what we are, right? We're saying you know, we're putting ourselves in leadership positions in all our communities, right? Black, brown, Latino, you know, all of us. And we're asking for things. And if we're not careful, they'll act like they give us something, like they act like they were giving them as by integration, but they didn't. So I'll give you a good example of something I personally went through. I was part of a program here in the city of Dallas, and it was meant to reduce violence in the streets, right?
Hmm.
So they get this program, they get us all on board, they parade us in front of the news. And they,
Right.
at that point, as soon as they paraded us in front of the news, they already won, because all they care about is the image and
Right.
them being able to say that. But there was nothing behind it. So they never gave us anything. So they sell us this illusion of change and progress, because that is all they're about, is the illusion of change. They don't ever
Hmm.
want to change anything, because that money that
Right.
we never saw any of it. You know, the work that I did in that community was really brown beret work, you know, volunteers and donations. So those $2 million, the people never saw them, but they sell the
Mhm.
illusion, and they're in office right now as a progressive people, right? They represent our community, but they don't
Yeah.
at all. So what they're doing, this is what I try to remind people. I give them a mental picture. You know, we used to walk into the store and they had this jar there. Hey, donate to the children in Africa, right?
Right, right.
And that money wasn't going to them. So what
Hmm.
they do is they parade our pain out there, get the money,
Hmm.
but we never see it. So we're just a selling point now to them. So man, we're
Yeah.
being used
True.
as happened. And I believe that's what happened there, you know. So they turned what was meant to be a good lesson, a good, actually something good, and they flipped it on us. And the system and these people in power, they're very good at that, at changing things,
Mhm.
you know. And actually, if we're not careful, they'll turn our strengths into our weaknesses. And that's what
Right.
that was, you know.
Yep. Good
Yeah.
point. Great point. Soon as you seen the media, you should have known it was trouble, trouble.
Yep.
You're right.
Exactly what you're saying, Tony. Exactly what you're saying. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, it's all performative. They portray it as if they're actually causing change, but in actuality, it's just the illusion of change. But things are literally getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Hmm.
Nothing's changing. Nothing's going anywhere. You know,
Absolutely.
and it's especially annoying. You know, I'm seeing liberals um talking over and over and over about, oh my god, guys, companies are so quote unquote inclusive now. I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't give a fuck. They're only using oppressed people to maximize profit. That's all they're doing. They don't give a fuck. Like, trust me, the same people that they claim that 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 they're quote unquote including are the same people that they're benefiting from their exploitation. Like, literally, it's
We're a market to
bullshit.
them. It's what we've
Yep.
became. Our pain is a market to them. It's a selling
Yep.
point. They say, they know if they say, hey, look at all these poor brown people over here. They're gonna tug at those strings. And the thing is, a lot of these people that are helping, they just want to give that dollar, feel good about themselves, and walk away. So so they're selling them the illusion too. So they're lying to each other, and we're over here struggling.
Yeah, it's on so many levels.
Yes,
Um,
it's deep. It is
it
very deep.
is. It is. There's layers to it all. I just want to go back to Sister Annie because I think she's had her hand raised for a minute
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Sister Annie, are you there?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you,
Yeah.
sis. We can hear you.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah,
sister.
I don't know if y'all discussed this up in between patients, but just reading this particular chapter, um, Aaron had us to revisit what happened in the 60s. But this is just a general question to everyone that's and don't you see that it's like the same thing that's happening today, but in a different way, like number one, how sports is being played out the same way. And we can take the example of the recent win of LSU as well as Iowa, in which um, that basketball player, her name is Angel, who was depicted as being the villain for the type of unprofessional player. And only thing she did was exactly what the other player had done by uh, pointing to her ring finger, as well as waving her hand in the matter where I don't see you. But the media have vilified her so badly, and it just shows a depiction based on race. I see it as, but maybe y'all can elaborate on that, or do you see that there is a little bit of progress? Just like Brother Tony said, it's just an illusion of what is taking place. We have not come to a point where we are equal. It will always be division. It will always be racism. And I feel that it's part of, the system. And the only way that I see that we will actually get our reparation is when the system, design system, self-destruct. Because there's no way there's going to be any kind of equality.
Thank you, sis. It was kind of hard to make out some of the words that you were saying, but I think we kind of get the gist of it. And you were speaking to the chapter that had to do with the sports.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also,
And
I just want to mention briefly, even in as a young child will be so impressed by everything that surrounds them. And you do have those instructors or those teachers who would discourage a young student not to venture in the field, that would set them back. And I can take back the time when I was going to school. I wanted to be a designer. And this one instructor said, well, it's going to be hard for you to even get into the field of designing any type of fashion because number one, you're Black, and number two, you're a woman. And this happened to be the professor of, oh God, I forgot this designer name. But he told me that, and that kind of set me back. So, we see that this is still happening in our institution where, it's that one thing that really can be a negative impression on a student that he or she would feel very insignificant. And it's evident
absolutely.
today.
Those are two really good points, sis, that you're making. Absolutely. And so the first one having to do with the sports, if I could take us back to in the book, page 54, where he says, I was fearless when playing sports. It was the one area where I had almost complete control and a healthy confidence in my abilities. But there were other more important things on the horizon for which my skills would prove to be best suited. And then, of course, we go into the discussion we were just having about, the 60s. And I'm sure that, there's more comments that we that we can go into, with more discussion that we can go into with regards to what happened there in the 60s. But also, sister, the second point that you're making about, children being really impressionable and easily discouraged by these sort of comments, where, Aaron he was told, you're not going to college, you're not college material. And how many times do we hear that, being said, as if college is the only way, but at some point, again, that became the selling point too, was that you had to go to college in order to make it. And now here we are, and most people are in debt, to where they will spend the rest of their lives trying to pay off these loans. And has it really got them somewhere? Because even when you go into the profession that you wanted to, if you get through all them barriers and get that
Right.
piece of paper that allows you to do what it is that you wanted to do as a profession, once you get in there, you realize that because of the bureaucracies and everything else that is in there, you are very limited in being able to do what it actually is that you love to do. They're taking away the humane aspect of the work that we're doing and turning it into, it's just money, whether you're producing something or whether you are delivering a service. The quality of service is not there. And I say this all the time, just to kind of show the huge make the point here, but it don't matter if you work at Jack in the Box or if you're working in a school, a hospital, or wherever, everything in between. There's no quality of service anymore. There
It's
just
not.
isn't.
So
There
let me
just
ask,
isn't.
this question for the people in the audience to answer. Do you find that it is important for the schools nowadays to promote college education, or should they encourage our students to go and pick up a trade or go and take classes, so this way they can have a lifetime skill and be less in debt? Anybody would like to answer that?
I kind of feel like I've seen that a lot, a lot of promotion of the trade and not against the college, which I do understand. But, like for us with the Chicano movement, it was student led, and it's kind of like they're trying to turn something that's meant to be good and bad with the debt and all that. So I think that's what should be attacked more, is the debt and the hurdles being put in place of the education, because we also want our people to be highly educated. We do want doctors and lawyers and stuff like that, but we don't want them to be indebted for life. And we also don't want our people to think that trade is lower, right? So I think it's up to us to educate our people that isn't how you value yourself. The education you have is like the calling, right? It's still like in our unit, I tell like, hey man, some of you guys might have been what called you is more the security thing, right? You feel a threat, so you want to train, and that's what calls you. And that's good because it's needed. There's some people that want to do the community service, and that's also needed. It's the whole that's needed. And I think it's up to us to train our people in that way of thinking. It's because a lot of the training, it's the capitalist ways they do it, right? So it's
Right.
what are you going to gain out of this education? How am I going to enrich myself? So we're the ones, I think, that we should be teaching our children that is not the way we look at the world. Is what skill set am I best suited for? Am I studious? If you can't sit and read a book all day, that you might not want to go to college. So don't set yourself up that way. But your value isn't placed on that. It's really placed on how you're going to use that talent that you have to serve your people and better your people as a whole. And I think that's what's missing. It's the individualism in everything that's killing it. Like Sister Veronica brought up, you know, some people might go into the medical field because they actually do want to help people. And then they get their heart broken because when they go in there, they realize that it's just money. So that's what needs to be changed, not necessarily not wanting to go into the field. You know, my point, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I see a lot of recruiters out there. I mean, they are really pressing for a lot of people to go to college. And to tell you the truth, it's good that we need to teach our youth, you know, things that, you know, that will fit their talents. But also we have to look at the school system. Why make it so expensive for them to
Yeah.
get a degree, you know? And it's competitive as it is. And I find that is a future way to keep everybody in debt.
Yes, it is. And also the value of the piece of paper, you know, they think, oh, I got a degree, but what's behind it, right? So, I mean, if
Right.
it's just a piece of paper and it's not getting you anything, then the value has lowered on it. See, before the education was because it was going to open doors for you. But if it's no
Mhm.
longer doing that, then it's not worth it in that way. But the education itself is worth it. It's,
Right.
I guess, the way we look at it in a way. So, and it has, I've seen it here in Texas where they're dumbing it down, right? So they're giving us pieces of paper. It's always they always move that, you know, the illusion again, right? Yes, you can vote, but they gerrymandered it, so my vote doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Yes, you can go to college, but you can't get a job because you're always in debt. So even though you make a lot of money, you're gonna give me half. So you're just as poor as always, right? So it's that illusion we have to fight. And we got to teach our children to fight that. Be like, hey man, make sure you understand what's really coming with this piece of paper, you know, because don't just fall for the illusion. I got this degree, but there's nothing behind it.
Absolutely. Because I wanted to ask you, what would you recommend or what would you advise the youth today, you know, before they head on to college or to the army or just to work? What advice would you give to them?
I would tell them to what's gonna feed them. We have a lot of, you know, a lot of depression, and that's coming from them not choosing the right path for themselves. So, you know, they need to look at themselves. I would tell them, and what's best for you, and learn to value that. You know, I value a member that works in Jack in the Box, you know, just as much as a professor, right? Because to me, it's all worth and all serving something. So internalize your value, I would say. Internalize your value and go with that. What are you best fitted for? What's going to make you happy? I tell my daughters, look, hey, if you're okay with making less money and having less, then that's you being happy, then hey, go for it. You don't have to work all that much, you know, so don't follow this illusion because somebody's telling you. Be happy with what you have, you know. So if that's how you're going to be happy. So know yourself.
That's it. Chad, Brother Chad, would you recommend, like for instance, your children just to take a break after they graduate from high school, or would you encourage them to go forward in the school?
I would encourage them to go forward in school, you know, not, you know, I mean, it depends on how you see college, man. You know, I went to college when I was in my 40s, you know, and I got my associate degree, and I also went and got my bachelor's degree. I refused to go any further, you know, because by that point, you know, I knew what my head was aiming at. So I started working with the HIV clinic as a beginning, and then from there I started working with the alcoholic and drug clinic. You know, so I was already determined what I wanted to do by going back to college. So that's what you gotta sit down with your kids and tell them what you want to do with, if you
Mhm.
go to college, what you gonna do with it, you know, and let them and let them tell you what they're gonna do.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the point that both of y'all are making there, because when it comes down to uh what it is that we value, and it's up to us to instill in our children that money isn't everything, you
That's
know.
right. That's right.
um and so what does that look like, day in and day out with our youth, is the question. But one thing that stood out to me, um Tony, you were saying about different skill sets, and what it is that people love to do, and doing that instead of what it is that somebody's telling you you ought to be doing, or you should be doing. You should go to school or whatever, giving them that freedom to choose. um, but I think about, um, at the clinic, I see a lot of people that come in, and because they're either they're on disability, social security, either SSI or SSDI, and they come in and they're coming into the mental health clinic for medication for depression. um, but really, when you start talking to them, it's they're feeling like they're nothing now, because from a very early age, we start hearing how you should be a productive member of society. And what does productive mean in a capitalist society? It means how much money are you rolling in? That's what
Yes.
that means. It's not how much
Functional
money
person.
right. It doesn't mean how much money you're making necessarily, because Tony, as you just said, the more you make, the more you're gonna pay, until you start cheating and doing some stuff, like some of the upper, they find their ways, right? Yet that's not a crime. That what if one of us does it, it's stealing, but if they do it, it's not stealing, right? But that is a conversation that I'm constantly having with people who are sitting there, and particularly men that are sitting there, and will just visible tears, because they are so depressed, because they now feel like they're nothing, they're worth nothing now. I can't work, whether it be for physical reasons, or whether it be for mental health, or a combination of the two, whatever it may be. It could be an accident, that a situation that put them in a place where they can't work anymore, and now they're on a fixed income, and that, but feeling like their value, their worth is nothing. Something's wrong with us as a society, if
Yes.
that is what it comes down to, is how much are you bringing home, as opposed to, like I remember one particular gentleman. He'd worked all his life, and he did, he went the route of going to school and all of that. And he was really proud of that. But when he had an accident and wasn't able to continue working, he lost everything. His wife left him. He couldn't be paying for things that he had been doing for his adult children. And so he pretty much was at a point where, it kind of, he was kind of buying his way, a certain lifestyle and a certain luxury with the money that he was making, because he was making good money. And so now things had flipped, and everybody left, and it was just him by himself, and it was like,
It's a
let's
lot.
look at what feeds your soul, is what my question was to him. What feeds your spirit? What makes your soul smile? What makes you feel alive? And he started telling me, he liked music, and different things. And I said, okay, you have time on your hands. You don't have to go to a 9 to 5. You don't have to worry about that anymore. And yes, you now are on a limited income, but you got to start living again, because our identity becomes what we do for a living.
Yeah.
We're living to work,
Yeah.
you know, and that becomes everything in a capitalist society. It becomes everything. And what happens the day that you're not physically able to work? Everybody should be able to work according to their own ability, and we have different abilities. And nobody should be shamed because they can't do what the next person can. That's not the way that we show value within humanity. It's just not humane.
But you know what, sister, as far as Aaron is concerned, he mentioned a point of one thing that he valued, and that was the time when he went to the mountain and he was being taught by, I forget the name of, I don't have the book right now, but he was being taught about, living in the woods, okay? And that was that quiet point of tranquility and at peace and being in nature. And I just want to ask, probably, not to put you on the spot, Leslie, was there ever a time that you can remember in your life where things wasn't so hectic as far as we living just to pay our bill, but that moment in time where you can, you know, suppress from all of those, you know, I guess the day-to-day lifestyle in which you see the peace, and this is what life is about. Is she still on?
You were directing your question to Sister Leslie.
Okay. Well, we can move forward. Katie, would you like to answer that?
What was the question again?
I was just explaining, talking about that moment when Aaron had went to the mountains, when his parents had drove him and his brother to the mountains. He gave a beautiful scenery about a moment where he was so relaxed and really took in nature. And is there a point in your life where you felt that you was able to get away from the chaos and the day-to-day issues, just to appreciate life, or being in a, I guess, in a place where you can really enjoy nature, where you want to share and speak more about that?
A time where I felt like that. I'm trying to think.
And where I'm getting at is just amazing how, most of our days in life consume us working to pay the bill, but we give like 5 or 10% to enjoy life for what it is. And usually, what I do now, then I go to the Blue Ridge Mountains to get away from, the racism, the competition, the issue, which really reflect back on how it was back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s, but now it's what, 2023.
Well, for me, the closest thing I get to that point, where I'm just like at peace with myself and where I'm just like relaxing, is when I ride my bike. Honestly, that's it for me. Whenever I ride my bike, whenever I go biking, I always just tend to feel, like it's just me, the wind, nature, and it's just very nice. So I guess for me, that's the moment of reprieve, going out biking and just being with myself.
How about you, Panther Queen? Would you like to share a moment in which you really appreciate or describe uh, the better way of living or a moment in your life that you would like to share that's different from what you're accustomed of being a part of every day in society?
For me, I just appreciate life in general. Um, I was born with sickle cell, so I'm usually always sick. So every day that I'm out of the hospital, every day that I can enjoy, good weather or just feeling good, I appreciate. And I hold that, treasure. It's a treasure for me to just still be here. And then also when people are unified, that's one of the joys of being alive is just seeing people be unified and trying to change this treacherous society because so many people are not on the same level, are not on the same wavelength. So it's just, it's cool to see all different nationalities and everybody just get along and do what we're supposed to do, live and take care of each other and, just take care of the kids and the community. So for me, that's pretty much it.
Let
And
me
I
say that. Let me say something on that.
oh,
To me, one of the greatest moments that happened to me was when I saw my first son being born. Uh, I was in the hospital when I saw that to see his mother give birth to my son, my oldest at that time. At this time, he's the oldest, but at that time he was a baby, and it was amazing, And plus, one of the greatest gifts that I had was when I came out of prison. I just it was unbelievable because prison is a life by itself. You don't have to worry about crossing the street, none of that stuff. And I had to learn.
Mm.
I had to learn how to cross the street. Some of my friends, some of my comrades would take me to a restaurant, and I'd be walking. After I finish eating, I take my utensils and I'll be walking out, like I'm walking out the restaurant with the utensils, and that was, it's you condition, in prison conditions you to do that kind of stuff, throw it out as you're going out. So being out of prison was one thing, and plus seeing my son was another, and plus going to college, because it really opened up my eyes to a lot of things. It made me, in the profession that I moved into, was alcohol and drugs, and also dealing with the HIV population. It was an amazing experience. Both of those jobs was an amazing experience for me. And I did some of your work too, Veronica, Sister
What's
Veronica.
that?
I did some of your work too, man. I used to do one-on-ones with people, one-on-one,
Okay.
do assessment,
Yeah.
all that evaluations and all that stuff. And I used to do group therapy and oh man, I did
Hmm.
all that stuff. It was it was
Yeah.
it was good.
Yeah. We've gotten away from the one-on-ones.
Yeah, yeah.
We need to take it back to the one-on-ones because now it's like, hurry up. It they even call it triage the client in mental health. How the hell you want me to triage somebody who's coming in? They want to talk about, they want somebody to validate the different things that they're dealing with in the societal conditions and stuff. People are hurting. How am I supposed to just put a band-aid on something and tell somebody to go away? I'm not doing it.
I used to
And I
do
refuse. I
I used to do one-on-ones with people,
don't.
and listen to their oh man, I'll be going home with all kinds of
Yeah, yeah,
it's crazy.
yeah. It talk about every person according to his own ability, right? Because we
Yeah, yeah,
all have
yeah.
gifts. we all have
And
limitations too.
wanna
Yeah.
add on, I just want to add on, with the shutdown of the country, of course, it had its bad and good parts to it. And one thing that I found, as far as, well, not in my profession, but as far as with my family, we were able to actually sit down and really spend more time with each other um, during the COVID pandemic than we ever did before, or at this point now where everybody is required to go back to work. At that moment, that time, we weren't able to really communicate with each other and have our table, our round table talk, which I find that in this chapter, Slow Awakening, Brother Aaron Davis, Dixon had mentioned about the closeness with his brothers when he was in a mountain, because they, in a way, had to survive on their own. Because it was kind of a contrast where his parents were allowed Aaron and his brothers to go up in the mountain, spend some time there. But when they came back home, they could not go out. And I'm like, they trust these young men in training to be exposed to the wilderness and have to, please sacrifice for staying alive, I would say, or surviving through that. But the parents were so strict and so nervous about allowing them to be in the street, or going to a friend's house. And I'm like, wow, that's really different. That's really different, And I'm saying it can be because of the fact they were protected parents, but it's the fact that I guess they had trusted their boys to apply the skills that they were taught and learned and use it to their best interest, instead of being vulnerable in a situation where they can lose their life based on being in the street, where they are confronted with discrimination, racism, and being profiled. I mean, is that something that you'll also gather, or that was something that was quite different?
My apologies, sister. It was kind of hard to follow. I don't know if it's the room that you're in or what, but it's kind of hard to follow like some of the I could catch some of the words, and then some of them are not as clear. And I'm looking here in okay, so somebody else said it was hard to hear. Okay, I want to make sure it wasn't my phone. Are you still able to hear us, sister?
Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, I have my earplugs in.
Oh, there you
I
go.
was
Yeah, that was much better.
Yeah, I was just talking about the difference and making the comparisons and contrast when Aaron and his brothers went to the mountains, and where his parents will allow him as well as his brother to enjoy their time in the mountains, or to depend on their skills, their life skills to be survivalists up there. But when they came home, their parents was very protective, where their parents would not allow them to go to a friend house or to a party because of the fact they was faced with racism, discrimination, and being profiled.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, it's because they were that protective, but then again, they allowed these young men in training to be out there in the wilderness and try to survive on their own during those days up in the mountains. And it's like a contrast and difference, based on the environment, where the parents trust them to be out there in the wilderness than to be vulnerable in the wilderness in their, surrounding or their community. Okay.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of sad, right, when you look at it that way, because they were very aware of what the dangers were on the other side of the door. And I want to tie that back in so we can start wrapping up for tonight. We had a couple people already, few people jump off, but just tying into what you're saying, sister, there, that at the end of this chapter, Erin says, I managed to stay disconnected from all the chaos, yet it was slowly seeping into my consciousness. And then in the last paragraph, he talks about walking by the TV. As the 6 o'clock news was broadcasting, Walter Cronkite was reporting that in Sacramento, some Black men with guns had invaded the California Capitol building. And he says while he was walking back to the tennis courts a little bit after having watched that, he thought briefly about the image of the Black men with guns, feeling a tinge of pride and amazement. It says, then I forgot about it, yet the image stayed in the back of my mind. So I think that's kind of a nice way to wrap up that chapter and this study, because it sets the tone for what we're about to read here in the next chapter 7, where it's entitled Stokely Comes to Town. So we're really going to get into, him diving into a political awareness. And so it's going to get good. We will have our next study group tomorrow. Let me make sure I get the times right. Tomorrow it'll be at 7 p.m. Central Time. So for those in Mountain Time, it'll be 6 o'clock. For those in Pacific, it'll be 5. For those in Eastern, it will be 9 p.m. So
it's for me, 9 p.m. for me.
You're in Eastern Time, brother?
Yeah, I'm in New York.
Oh yeah, you did say. Yes, sir. 9 p.m.
Okay.
Are you a night owl?
I go to bed like sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, because
I'll be reading.
You're like really late. Yeah. Well, if you could join us tomorrow, brother, that would be great.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
All right. Is there anyone who has any final comments, questions? All right. Well, with that, we will wrap it up for today. And again, if you're able to come back tomorrow, same link. All right. Sister Annie, you want to count us down?
Oh, sure. That'd be no problem. Well, I appreciate everybody coming on. Tony,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sis.
Okay. I want to thank you, Tony, for joining us, and we look for you to come and continue moderating with us. And Panther Queen is always a delight.
Yeah.
And Chad, my homie, my brother.
Thank you.
Spanish Hollow. Nice having you, sir. So if there's any questions, concerns, or a statement, I'm going to close it down on the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Black power, everyone.
Like
Black
power.
power.
Black power.